Hello class, today I'll be covering a self-study chapter of chapter 5.4 mathematical formula. So, you may have seen this mathematical formula around back in primary school. Alright, we have the area of circle, area equals to pi r squared, as well as the circumference, which is 2 pi r. So then you may ask yourself, what is a formula? So a formula is basically an equation where we have the equal sign that expresses a relationship, alright, between quantities of variables. In this case, quantity is what we know as our constants, alright, and we have variables which are your algebraic letters. Okay, so in this case, on the left side we have area and circumference respectively, and this equation represents how area is related to the radius of the circle, right? Whereas pi and 2 pi are actually just your constants, which are just numbers. Is that clear so far? Alright, so now let's look at some questions. We have an equation here, b equals to 3c squared over 5y. Now, you may not have seen this equation before, right? However, this is a case of simple substitution, alright? They ask you to find the value of b when c equals to -2 and y equals to 4. Alright, so the first step in doing this equation, doing this question, is to first copy down the equation. Alright, next thing, we know that the value of c is -2 and the value of y is 4. So our next step is to substitute in the relevant values. So we know that c equals to -2 and y equals to 4. Okay, take note, wherever you are substituting, always remember to add brackets, alright, before you add the value of the variable. This is because, for the case of a square term, if you do not add in the brackets, your answer will become negative instead of a positive value. Okay, so then by simply substituting this into your calculator, you should get the answer 3 over 5. Is that okay? Great. So now let's look at another question. Okay, very similar substitution type of method. First, we copy down the formula. H equals to c bracket x plus y. Okay, find the value of h when c equals to -3, x equals to half, and y equals to 5. Okay, now you can try this by yourself. Stop the video here to try it. If not, then you can carry on. Okay, so we just sub in c equals to -3. We have a big bracket over here. X equals to half, and we add our last value of y, which is 5. Okay, now by substituting this in the calculator, you should get the answer of -16.5, or we have -33 over 2. Either is fine, or if you want, you also can put it in a decimal form, -16.5. Right, any one of these works. Right, okay, on top of substitution, now there's also a higher level question where we have to change the subject of an equation. So we have x equals to cy plus n. Alright, now notice that the question is now asking you for the value of n instead of the value of x. Where is n? N is over here. So you notice now we have a problem. We cannot just substitute in, right? There must be some movement of the equation. So let's think about it. If you want to find the value of n, we need to make n the subject. However, do you want to manipulate the equation where everything here is a variable? Okay, so the first step for such equation is to sub in the values of x, c, and y. Alright, so let's substitute in first. You know the value of x is 5, we know the value of c is 3, the value of y is 2, and we put a plus n at the back. Now do you realize this is just back in chapter 5.1, right? Solving linear equations with integer coefficients. So we just simplify it now. 3 times 2 we get 6 plus n. Now do you realize it's much easier to solve, right? We can simply just minus 6 on both sides to get rid of our 6 over here, and we get the equation -1 equals to n, and that is our value of n. Is that clear? Of course, if you want to always have the convention of making the variable on the left side, the answer is just n equals to -1. Either one works, okay? Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have a fraction now, okay? Same thing, we notice that they want to find the value of m, but m is not the subject of the equation. So the first step is we sub in the value of x, n, and t. Of course, you want to try it yourself. You can pause the video first and then try yourself and then look at the answer. So after substituting in, we should get 6 equals to m bracket 2 minus 4 over 2. Okay, let's get rid of all the brackets first. Alright, we simply get 6 equals to 2m minus 4 over 2. Alright, so at this juncture, what we can do is, we have a fraction here, but we don't really like fractions, so we should get rid of the denominator. How do you get rid of the denominator of a fraction? We just multiply by the denominator on both sides of the equation, and we get 12 equals to 2m minus 4. Alright? Okay, now it's easy to solve, right? To get rid of the negative -4 on the right side, we just add 4 on both sides, and we get 16 equals to 2m. And for the last step, to make m the subject, we just divide 2 on both sides. We should get 8 equals to m, or we can write m equals to 8, either one works. And that's how we get our value of m for when m is not the subject. Is that clear? Okay, however, I want to do one step further, alright? Okay, what if the question asks you, they don't give you this at all, they just ask you make m the subject without giving you any values at all? How do you proceed? Okay, so let us take a look. First, you copy down the equation. X equals to mn minus t over n. Now, our m is trapped over here in the numerator of the fraction. Alright? You want to make m the subject. So, we can do exactly what we have been doing just now. Alright? However, there is no numbers. So instead of multiplying by numbers and dividing by numbers, we just multiply and divide by the variables itself. So first step, we want to get rid of the denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply n to both sides of the equation. Okay, so do you recall what happens when we get x multiplied by n? Okay, we should get xn. Now, because we multiply this whole fraction by the denominator, we are just simply getting rid of the denominator. So this will give us mn minus t. Do you see the idea now? We are trying to get the value of m. So this minus t is irritating you. It's blocking you from getting m. So let's get rid of it. And how do you get rid of minus t? We simply just add t. Alright, we add t to both sides of the equation. Now we get xn plus t equals to mn. And for the final step, mn is simply m multiplied by n. We don't want the n over here. So instead of multiplying n, the opposite of multiply n is to divide n. So we're going to divide n on both sides of the equation, and this will finally give us xn plus t over n equals to m, where m is now the subject. Is that clear, everyone? Okay, so the summary of this lesson is, for the first part, we practice substituting known values of a variable into an equation to find the value of the subject. Okay, for the next step, we substitute in the values of variables into the known equation. However, we still have to do a final step of solving for the unknown value, where we have to make the unknown value the subject. And for the last and the most challenging kind of question is when you are given an equation without any known values. How do we make one of the variables a subject? Right? So the only difference between this and the previous part is that instead of multiplying and dividing values or known numbers, we just multiply and divide by variables. Alright? If not, then this is the end of our self-learning chapter. Alright, please proceed to try the examples posted in the Google Classroom. Alright, see you in class.